And welcome back to Veritas. I'm Al Fabregas, and you're listening to Eric Dubay directly from Bangkok, Thailand. And a lot of people write to me now that I've been discussing the flat earth for a while, and they ask me, so Mel, what's your take on aliens now that you talk about the flat earth? And my alien take has always been the same from day one. I still discuss it. Does that mean that I believe it? Absolutely not. I don't believe anything. The reason why I discuss it is because I want to find out. And the more I find out, the more I realize, folks, and maybe this is the first time you're going to hear me say about this, even though there are plenty of people out there who say they have been abducted, who have taken trips on a ship, I'm still waiting for that trip myself. I haven't gotten it. So my question is, could this be? Because we never heard about aliens until probably, even though we had the Aurora event in the 1890s, and we have paintings from 1,000 years ago that show some anomalies in the air of flying chariots, and even in the Bible. Maybe that's true. Maybe they come from a different world, but instead of another planet, what about from perhaps a different Earth or another puddle close to us, and their tourists are coming and they're allowed to show themselves, or maybe they're military machines to perpetuate this lie. And 1970s, that's when the whole Roswell thing came out, even though it was the 1940s. And maybe they're waiting for that other card. They had communism. They have terrorism, the boogeyman. The next one is going to be a celestial object making our way. And the last card, according to Werner von Braun, will be the alien invasion, where they're going to unite all the militaries of the world. But when it happens, don't believe it. But I don't mean to digress. This flight from Bali to Los Angeles that makes an emergency land, not a detour, an emergency landing in Anchorage, Alaska. How do you explain that, Eric?
Yeah, they don't try to explain that because it doesn't make any sense on their map. But just like most Southern Hemisphere flights don't make any sense on the spherical map, they almost all come into the Northern Hemisphere, mostly very high into the Northern Hemisphere, before then dropping back down to the Southern Hemisphere to their other destination. Whereas if the Earth was really a ball the way they say it is, they should just stay on the exact same line of latitude in the Southern Hemisphere, and that would be the shortest trip from both points. Yet they don't do that. They make these stopover points way up in the Northern Hemisphere for no other reason than the fact that the Earth is flat, and that those are straight line paths going up through the Northern Hemisphere before then dropping back down to the Southern Hemisphere, because that is actually the straight line path, the closest, quickest path, and not the supposed path you're shown on a spinning ball Earth. So they'll keep silent about why they do that, and when you see the little curve in their animation, they say, "Oh, we're curving around the Earth. That's why we're not flying in a straight line." Now, the reason the plane makes that little curve as it does in the animations is because based on the fake maps that they're showing you, it has to be a curve, because on the flat map, the actual map, it would be a straight line, but they don't show you that map. And as for the aliens, it's similar to what I was saying about getting a whistleblower to give you the information so that you'll believe the propaganda more. They have a supposed flying saucer crash, and then they bring out the first newsreel that says that it was people saw the flying saucer crash and alien bodies recovered. Whoa! Then the next day they cover it up and they say it was a weather balloon. Sorry about that. We misreported. And so the thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis result, the Hegelian dialectic. Right. They've given you both sides here. The synthesis result they want is that you actually believe that there were aliens, even though now you have no evidence of it whatsoever. And they've even come out and come against it, but first they came out for it. And then after that, then they bring out more whistleblowers, more hearsay, no physical evidence, but more people with supposed inside information to tell you that, yeah, it was true. Meanwhile, the official channels continue denying it, and that gives this mystery that Adam Weishaupt talked about. When you want to inculcate someone into a new worldview, you have to shroud it in mystery so that they always want a little bit more. And that's what they've done with aliens. They've turned it into this insatiable mystery and giving us little bite-sized pieces from their supposed insiders, all the while the official establishment deny denying it so that we think that it's this counterculture truth that's seeping through the cracks, and we want to be part of knowing about it. And so that's what aliens have been for the past 100 years almost. UFOs, there's military craft that look like flying saucers from the bottom, but look like a plane from the top. Yet, thousands of years ago, up until today, there are also, say, people in the Amazon who drink ayahuasca or take peyote and other natural substances, and they also talk about things very similar to aliens and UFOs, and they paint pictures of them, and they show flying saucers and beings getting out of them and interacting with them and giving them advanced knowledge of the plants and other things, of things that will happen and all this. But these are known to be interdimensional creatures, interdimensional phenomenon happening when you interact with these entheogens, these psychedelic plants. And the most powerful psychedelic on Earth is produced naturally in our pineal gland, in our third eyes, and it comes out when we sleep. And so dreams are actually a product of this. And so when people are asleep and then they're abducted by aliens and they have this experience that's so real to them and so unfamiliar, it very well could be an endogenous DMT burst causing these same kind of ayahuasca visions that the ayahuasqueros in Peru are seeing and know to be interdimensional beings. But if we've been fed this new propaganda that there's extraterrestrial aliens and physical UFOs, then we start to think that this phenomenon that's been known and talked about for thousands of years, of these star beings, these astral beings and astral travel that we're able to do, turns into physical space travel and Star Trek type stuff that they're trying to get us to believe in. I mean, people thousands of years ago believed in so-called aliens, or if you will, like star beings, and they say that they traveled to the stars too, like the ancient Mithric cults, the Mithra worship. They had this church called the Mithraeum, and it had tubs all lined up together in a sensory deprivation type environment, where you can't hear anything, you can't see anything. They meet at midnight, a midnight mass when it's dark. Everybody lies in these...
It's like a saltwater tank.
It's a saltwater tank. And so it's just like, they have today, what do they call them? Sensory deprivation tanks, saltwater tanks. It's so saline, and the water is at the exact temperature of your body, so that when you're laying there in complete darkness, complete silence, and you're floating in the same temperature water with no effort whatsoever to keep you afloat, you basically don't feel your body anymore. And so, in other words, your consciousness easily leaves your body. It facilitates the out-of-body experience. And in the Mithraeum, they would all line up, just like in a Christian church where you eat the body and blood of Christ and they give you a cracker and some wine. Well, they would eat the body and blood of Mithra, but it wasn't just a cracker and some wine. It was magic mushrooms and some powerful herbs. And you eat these things, drink these things, lay down in these communal tubs with all the water touching each other, just like in Minority Report. And there was holes in the ceiling above each tub, and they said that their consciousness would communally come out of their bodies, go through the hole in the ceiling, and go to the stars where they would communicate with astral beings, and they had their own civilizations. See, but the difference is that this is all happening where they're here on Earth, and their consciousness is going to the stars, not physically creating some kind of technology that floats us up there like NASA says that they're doing, and then meeting physical creatures that you can touch. That's not what they were doing. There's some kind of beings that are non-physical that we have access to like this, but we've lost contact with them. And the reason is because of this, because now we've been fed a fake cosmology and a fake idea of who these astral beings are. And so we're trying to create metal technology to try and reach them, instead of remembering that the natural plant technologies already exist here for us to reach these beings and to interact with them. The ayahuasqueros say that these plants and these beings are what told them about the combinations of plants and stuff to use to access them. So what I see as the alien phenomenon is a natural, entheogenic, psychedelic phenomenon that happens inside our pineal glands, as well as can be facilitated by other plants if we eat, drink, or smoke them. being turned into a physical extraterrestrial alien from other physical planets in their infinite spinning ball universe. See what I mean? They're changing it into this other thing, and what they want to do is to use that as their reason for the New World Order, as they've been talking about, like in the Independence Day movie, and now, what is it, 20 years later now? They've
Yeah, the
come
new
up
one.
the new one, right? Because they want to make sure that this idea stays in your mind. The idea that if there's an off-world threat, what needs to happen is all the governments, all the militaries of the world need to come together in a new world order to face this threat. They want that idea fresh in your mind so that when they unleash their Project Bluebeam,
Yep.
is a holographic display that they can make. And if you see Chinese floating cities, Google that. They've already unveiled this technology where they can make you believe that there is whatever they want in the sky through holographic technology. And they have another technology where they can shoot like sonar into your ear so that you're hearing as though someone's voice is talking to you inside your head. Not in a speaker form, but coming directly inside your brain. They've used these for advertisements in New York City recently.
Yeah, they already have that in certain grocery stores where you're walking by an aisle, nobody can hear it, but the moment you pass through a certain box of Cheerios, if you will, you hear a voice saying, buy this to be healthy or what have you. And they have it from top of buildings also, where you're walking by a certain, corner in a street where you hear something but nobody else can. So the technology is there. But I think just like the Who Pinball Wizard song, that deaf, dumb, and blind kid sure plays a mean pinball. They want us deaf, dumb, and blind and playing video games, watching sports, being completely disconnected and distracted from the reality of all of this. So, in your opinion, could by the way, all these plants that you're referring to, even marijuana, why would something that's natural, that was given to us, of course, I understand it has to be treated with respect, but to make it illegal, to outlaw that, it makes you wonder. All the cures that I had Rick Simpson on the show the other day discussing everything that marijuana alone can cure. Imagine all the rest of the plants that are out there that are outlawed. But in your opinion, could the hollow earth be the control opposition on this topic? I remember a good friend of this show, Dr. Bruce Agnew. He was organizing an expedition to the North Pole to reach one of the entrances. What's your take on this hollow earth?
Well, there's definitely domes, deep underground military bases. There's definitely caverns, tunnels, sinkholes, and things that show that the Earth, in some places, is in some ways hollow. So there certainly are, like I said, underground bases, caverns, tunnels, sinkholes, all these kind of things, which wouldn't be on a completely solid Earth. Though the traditional hollow Earth model is a ball Earth model, which has been disproven. So there's definitely not a hollow earth ball, as many are shown, with a second sun in the middle of the ball, and somehow that gravity is still in effect there. That hollow model I see to be complete disinformation, just like the concave earth model, which is the opposite of the convex ball earth model you've been shown, where they say that you're living inside a ball and that supposedly the Earth curves upwards. But again, it's easily proven that the Earth is flat. The horizon's always flat. The Earth does not curve upwards like a bowl shape like they say it does, nor does the star cosmology work in the way that our Lord and Savior Stephen Christ would like you to think. He's the main progenitor of this nonsense model. And then, of course, there's your fake flat Earth models as well. The Flat Earth Society says that the Earth is constantly rising at 9.8 meters per second squared, and that is the cause of the supposed gravity effect, is because the flat Earth disk is constantly rising up. Not that gravity is constantly pulling you down, but that the flat Earth is rising up. Now, of course, neither of these things are happening, as I told you, and it's just based on density. But when you present all of these alternative cosmologies, it muddies the water. It poisons the well. So people coming into alternative Earth cosmology, instead of having just the obvious flat, motionless Earth to choose from. Now you've got the hollow Earth, the concave Earth, the floating disk Earth, and many others that I haven't even mentioned yet to add to the pile. And where I stand on it is, again, the physical evidence. And you can't show me any curvature, be it convex or concave. Everything has always been shown to be flat. I don't necessarily know where the edges of the flat Earth are because we're not allowed to go there. There's an Antarctic treaty that doesn't allow you to independently explore Antarctica and to see how far that southern ice wall goes. So I don't know the shape beyond what I'm able to see and experiment on. But as far as we know, everything is flat. And just, people ask, well, where's the edge? Why don't you fall off the edge? Where's the edge of the flat Earth? Well, where's the edge of this supposed infinite space that you've been fed? This idea that you live in an infinitely expanding universe with an infinite number of stars and planets. I can ask the exact same question of you.
But why does it have to have an edge? Why couldn't it be, if you look at, okay, let's say the flat Earth model, we have the circle, we have the sun and the moon going around, and of course, the farther from the edge the sun is going around, you can expect those huge walls of ice. So wouldn't it be that the farther you go, there's going to be ice, but why couldn't there be, and this is just speculation on my part, other puddles everywhere else, circles? If you look, if you're able to go up 1,000,000 miles, as we're told that we can, perhaps we can see that we have more of these puddles everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, these kind of things are all possible. How the Earth terminates, whether it's infinite or there is some edge, or if there's a barrier like a firmament or a wall that doesn't allow us to go further, we don't know yet. And it's a foregone conclusion to say that there is that one is better than the other, or that you like this one more than that one. At this point, it's open to speculation, and I wish they'd let us go check, because I think they know. I think they know the answer, and they don't want us to find out for ourselves, and that's why the military enforced flight and ship restrictions in the Antarctic. They won't just allow any Joe Blow to go down to the Antarctic and peruse around. They don't even let big companies go there and exploit the resources. So there's something they're hiding there. Otherwise, they would certainly be down there mining and getting all the resources they could out of that place. But instead, they only allow very few government-funded scientific missions there. And there's a couple tourist photo ops that rich people are able to take. But again, you only go to where they want you to go. You go to their fake South Pole and come on back and see a couple penguins, and that's about it.
If we had a over Unity device, and I've heard of people who have it, the reason why this is not becoming mainstream, this free energy device, I think more than fracturing the oil industry, what is the first thing that you would do, Eric? And I know I would. I used to be a pilot. If I'm able to have a craft that allows me to navigate with a bunch of supplies, that's the first thing I would do. I would try to find that edge. And I think that's why they don't want people, and they have militarized all these edges so that you don't go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't want you to go to as far south as you can go, and they don't want you to go as far north as you can go. They want us to stay in the middle area here. That they are the Lord of the Rings, ruling from the mountaintop in the center of the earth, and they keep us in the middle rings, in Middle Earth. They control the outer rings and the inner ring, the North Pole and the southern circumference, so-called South Pole. If you look at any documentary of the South Pole or the North Pole, and you look at it with a keen eye for physical evidence, as I've been recommending people do, you'll notice that there's no physical evidence that you are actually at the North Pole or the South Pole in any of these documentaries. For example, you look at a North Pole documentary, and it will always show a couple guys on some ice somewhere with a GPS device that's going 89.3, 89.4 until they get to 90 degrees, and then they start cheering, and it looks exactly like everywhere else on this ice-covered plateau that they are, and they say, we're here, this is the geographic North Pole. Geographic, not magnetic, because they never take out a compass and prove that they are at the magnetic North Pole. Instead, they say that, the magnetic North Pole constantly moves. apparently it constantly moves so much that they can't ever show us an example of walking in a circle around it to show that they actually are at the magnetic North Pole. Because if you were, you could walk in a circle and north would always point towards that middle point of the North Pole as you walked in a circle. Similarly, at the South Pole, where they put their ceremonial ball and say that the actual pole is a few hundred meters away, apparently, well, you should be able to take a compass, find where that point is, walk in a circle, and north should always be pointing away from that little pole in the ground. But they don't want you to do that. Nor will they show you stars. If we were actually at the North Pole in their little documentary, they should be able to point the camera straight up using a sextant 90 degrees, and Polaris should be right above their position, and they should be able to show all the constellations around it in the way that they should be from that point of view. But you'll never see that. They don't show the star chart, the star readings from when they're at the supposed South or North Pole, and they don't show you a compass to show that they're magnetically at the South or North Pole. All they show you is their GPS, global positioning system, their fake globe, just a number on a LCD screen, hold it up to the camera and say, we're here. Again, you need physical evidence. People throughout history have said that at the North Pole is actually a mountain of magnetite so huge that it draws the compasses to it, and that's what is causing the magnetism of Earth and the magnetism to be stuck to the North Pole. Well, that's a very interesting claim, and if you look into the history of that claim, it's been claimed so for thousands of years up until modern day, when a few Freemasons claim to have gone to the North and South Poles and say that, there's nothing really there, it's just a lot of ice, and it's not worth you even bothering to try and go there. Yet if you look at ancient people, they said that at the North Pole was heaven. They said it was Eden. They said that's where paradise is. The most ancient account of the North Pole is by a guy named Pythias, and he said that as he approached the North Pole, it became the land, water, and air became one substance, like a gel, like a jellyfish, and that he couldn't pass it anymore, and that it was just like all the elements became into one. That's an interesting claim. Another claim from around 500 years ago was that explorers went there and the nails from their ships shot out of their wooden ships towards this mountain of magnetite, and it was drawing them into it. So there's claims like that, and we can't fly over the North Pole. They have polar routes near the North Pole that they go over, but they don't allow people to fly directly over it, which again, I wonder, based on these accounts of something is pulling these magnets to it, there could be something to these accounts, and they don't want you to go to either place to figure it out for yourself. So they just give us platitudes, they give us documentaries of nothingness to make us believe that, it's already been discovered, you don't need to see the center of the Earth, which is the North Pole, and you don't need to see the edges of the Earth, the southern circumference, which they call the South Pole, because we've already explored it, and it's just really cold, there's nothing there, and nothing of importance to humanity. So they're keeping us away from both of the so-called poles. The only real pole, by the way, is the North Pole. The magnetism of the actual flat Earth is like that of a ring magnet in loudspeakers, where the monopole is the north, right in the middle, and then the South Pole is every point along the outer circumference. And east and west in this type of cosmology is a circle. East and west is not a straight line. North is the center, south is everywhere along the circumference, and east and west are circles, clockwise and counterclockwise.
Is going clockwise and counterclockwise, right?
That's right. Now, they tell us, though, that the magnetism of their spinning ball Earth is caused by a molten lava metal core, which, because it's constantly moving, causes the magnetic poles, which somehow form at the surface and cause magnet needles to point towards it, constantly moves, and that's the reason that they can't pin it down and show us where the actual pole is. So it's a convenient excuse based on no physical evidence. Once again, there is no magnet in existence like this, where it has some sort of molten metal core and it causes a dipolar magnetism to happen on the outside of the sphere. There is no magnet like that. So they're giving you once again a fake science, a fake magnetism to explain their ball Earth, in lieu of an actual magnet, actual science, in the kind of that we see and experience every day here, where you hold a compass flat and it points north and south at the same time, as it only could on a flat Earth. If you were on a ball Earth, you wouldn't ever actually be pointing north, would you? Because you'd be under that ball somewhere. You'd be lower than it, and the north would be pointing off into space, and the south would be pointing off into space behind you. And so the actual magnetism of Earth, the way a compass actually works, only works on a flat plane, just like many other things we've been discussing here.
So two things that people bring to my attention, including at this conference that I attended a few weeks ago. And some of the speakers said, hey, listen, I don't want to discuss it because I still don't understand lunar eclipses. How can you explain a lunar eclipse then?
So they give you the explanation that a lunar eclipse happens because the sun, earth, and moon all line up like 3 billiard balls in a 180-degree straight line syzygy, so that the shadow of the ball earth cast from the sun falls perfectly on the moon. And they say that is a proof that the earth is a ball because of that shadow of the earth. Yet, again, think about it for a second. There's no proof that that is actually the shadow of the earth. And we have seen lunar eclipses many times throughout history where the sun and the moon are visible both above the horizon at the same time, proving that it couldn't possibly be the shadow of the earth, because as they said, and as logic dictates, they would have to be lined up right in a straight line for that shadow to be cast on the moon, and in those instances, it is not. So some other explanation must be sought. It cannot possibly be this that causes eclipses. So, and this is another thing, these Masonic magicians, they're in the business of giving you answers. The answer doesn't have to be physically provable. It just has to be a believable answer. And that's what they've given you with eclipses. That seems believable. But then you look at the physical evidence. The sun and the moon have been seen in the sky at the same time over 50 times in the past 500 years, recorded even by their own Royal Astronomical Society, proving that it couldn't possibly be the Earth's shadow being cast from the sun on the moon. But they just keep saying that over and over again, put it in textbooks, and people believe it. For thousands of years before that, there was a cosmology that said that there was a third body, a dark body that's been called the black sun, and that is what caused eclipses. When this third disk, shaped just like the sun and the moon are almost equal sizes, I say there was a third one, and this third one would pass over them, and that's what causes both solar and lunar eclipses. Again, this is a celestial occurrence, so I don't have the technology to go up there and see for sure if there is another dark body up there, so I won't say that that is definitely the explanation. But I will say that what NASA tells you about the ball Earth shadow on the moon is definitely the wrong explanation, and something like this is more plausible, or could be something else as well. But again, wait for physical evidence before making decisions on these things, and until you have them, just be in that space of not knowing. It's okay not to know. Just because some liar tells you an answer doesn't mean that that's how you should think. Instead, you should think all possibilities until you can definitely narrow them down through discernment of physical evidence.
Are you familiar with the salt flats in South America, the Salar de Uyuni?
Yes, yeah. It's this, how long is it? Over 100 miles, is it?
11,000 square miles, the landscape.
Right. Totally flat. You can take video and pictures I've seen of it, and the sky and the earth almost seem to meld into one when it's rained, because there's just this reflective pool over the flat surface, and you can just see it in all directions. Yeah, just yet another proof of the flat earth right there.
Now, when it comes to a sailboat, let's say you and I take a sailboat from Los Angeles and we head west in a straight line. What would happen if we continue that course for, days and days and days?
You'd notice that west wouldn't be a straight line after a while, and that you'd have to start curving. The closer you are to the North Pole, the more radical the curve would be. The further away you are from the North Pole, the less of a curve.
That's if I'm following some kind of...
If you're following magnetic north.
There you go.
Yeah. So if magnetic north, say, was always to 90 degrees to your right, then it would be a circle as you went around the Earth. And that is what Magellan and other people who have circumnavigated the Earth have done. And they claim that this is proof of their ball Earth once again. They say, well, these people have, like Magellan, sailed all the way around the Earth and came back to the exact same point. And that's proof that it must be a ball. But if you think about it, on a circle, on a flat disk, it is equally possible to do the exact same thing. So all they've done is they've traced a line around the North Pole, done some inlets and outlets around the continents, and come back to where they started. Just like you can take a compass, put the center point in the middle of a piece of paper, and trace a circle around that point. That's all Magellan and other so-called circumnavigators of the Earth have done. What they haven't done is gone from the North Pole to the supposed South Pole, back up around the ball, and come back to the North Pole. This kind of circumnavigation north to south can't happen. But east to west can and does happen regularly. They'll lie and say that they've done it, but you won't find any physical evidence that anyone has ever flown or sailed north to south circumnavigations. Just Freemasons, admitted Freemasons lying about it.
When I'm thinking of the North Pole, if I have some kind of instrument that shows me that I'm going north, a compass. If I'm standing on top of the center of it, would that compass be going around in circles?
Say that one again?
If I have a compass and I'm standing on top of the North Pole, would that compass be going around in circles, going all crazy?
Oh, good question. I don't know. If there is a actual magnetic mountain at the North Pole, I'd imagine your compass would just be sucked out of your hand and stick to the ground on the mountain underneath you. But yeah, I don't know if that account is true or not. Though, I mean, the guy that gave us our current projection, that globe Earth projection that we use today, Mercator, he actually had it's a 1564, I believe, map showing the North Pole to be a mountain and to have all these sections and rivers flowing off of it, just like it's described in the Bible and in the Vedas and other texts throughout history have described the North Pole as being this wonderland, this paradise. And so, I don't necessarily ascribe to that any more than I ascribe to their going on some ice plateau with a GPS device and saying, oh, we're here. To me, it could be either at this point, though I tend not to side with known liars. So when I know these people have been lying to me about everything for 500 years, I tend not to think that what's at the North and South Pole is what they're propagating. I tend to believe more the ancient accounts, which are quite far out. So I'm not just going to go and say, oh, I believe that. There's a magnetic mountain or a jelly North Pole, whatever, like Pythia said. But it's interesting. It's totally different than what we've been fed. And for me, as an open-minded person who knows I've been lied to, I'm staying critical and open-minded until I see further evidence of what it could be. And I'm not just going to say, oh, I saw them reach 90 degrees on a GPS device. That means they've made it.
But the Mercator projection, that's the one that we are told all the time. Those are the maps we see in our, textbooks and so on. And those are the ones that mostly reflect what we see on these Earth CGI pictures that NASA gives us. But if the Gall-Peters projection, isn't that the real one? And if that's the case, shouldn't we be seeing them on those CGI pictures?
The Gall-Peters is a slightly better projection than the one that we're shown as far as the relative size of the continents. But again, the map is a rectangular map and a projection of their ball Earth. So the Gall-Peters map isn't very accurate either. People have claimed that the 1892 Gleason's map. There's also an Air Age map, Hammond's Air Age map. There's some flat Earth maps that are pretty popular, and there's slight discrepancies between them. But as far as, say, flight routes, like we were talking about earlier, mm-hmm. I find that the Gleason's map or the Hammond's map to be quite accurate as far as that's concerned. There may be slight discrepancies, the size of Australia and the length versus the height and these kind of things. But we very well may not have a single perfect map of the Earth. but the closest that I've seen is the flat Earth map. It fits all of the southern hemisphere flights much better than any, whether it's the Gall Peters or the Mercator or any of the other projections. It just doesn't make any sense that they would, for instance, on a flight from South Africa to Australia, go all the way up into the northern hemisphere before coming back down, when you could just make a straight shot, whether it's Mercator or Gall Peters. That's how it looks, and it's certainly not that way on the actual Earth, which is oriented more like the flat Earth map, where everything circles around and the North Pole is the center point, not just the top of the ball.
What does this mean for astrology, Eric? Does a flat Earth invalidate thousands of years of teachings?
Quite the opposite. The spinning ball Earth is what mostly invalidated astrology, and they changed the term to astronomy once they started lying to us. Astrology says that the movements of the stars and wandering stars, planets around us, has an effect on the life and consciousness of things here, which makes sense in a geocentric perspective where everything revolves around and is beholden to us. In the spinning globe Earth infinite cosmology, astrology makes no sense because these things are just spinning balls of dust that happened for no reason, and we're humans that evolved for no reason. And so how could there possibly be some sort of significance between us and them based on consciousness? Consciousness, something that supposedly evolved into existence out of just material interactions. So it's actually their cosmology that makes astrology irrelevant, and the geocentric flat Earth cosmology that people believed for thousands of years, back when astrology was being espoused and the stories were being created and everything, they were basing it on a flat geocentric model where all the stars are revolving around us. So if anything, the flat Earth brings astrology back into significance and shows that the Earth is important and all the celestial bodies are rotating over us, which attests to our importance. It shows that this is the stage. Like Shakespeare said, the world is a stage. Everything here is been put here and created here for us, and we are the actors. We're, if you think of it as God being the ultimate consciousness, the omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient one that pre-exists all space, time, and matter, creating this yin-yang world of duality and illusion where we're separated from our innate oneness, separated from God, and put into these dualistic bodies of male and female under a sun and moon sky in a world of good and evil where we have to use our subjective consciousness to choose whether we want to rise to the heights of good or the depths of evil. And that's what we're living in here. We're all subjective aspects of this one consciousness that created us, here to play and experience on this world stage that's been put here for us. And the ones who are in control of it now are in the business of making you not believe that, making you think, as Mel said earlier, that you're just an insignificant speck and that there's no purpose to your life, so that you should be nothing but a slave and a consumer, and that society should be structured the way it is, geared towards hedonism and selfishness and individuality instead of towards more spiritual aspects. And of course they use religion to control spirituality, to put it into dogmatic boxes, so that they say you must choose one of our religions that we feed you. If you don't believe our atheistic, nihilistic cosmology, the whole spinning ball nonsense, and you still are clinging on to this notion of intelligent design, well, here's Brahma, here's Jesus, here's Muhammad, here's any number of supposed avatars of God that we can get you to believe in, and then box you into this section so that you won't actually use your own mind, your own critical thinking, and evolve that throughout your life, evolve your own spiritual understanding. We want to keep you in this little box, right? If you fall out of the NASA box, we'll catch you in the Islam, Judeo, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, whatever, one of these other boxes to bring you in. So it's, as you said, controlling the opposition. They've got every side covered. So no matter where you go to for truth, they're already controlling that like a gatekeeper, so that they don't get to the reality. So I recommend don't look anywhere, really. Just figure it out yourself. No religion has the answer. NASA doesn't have the answer. I don't have the answers. Mel doesn't have the answers. You've got the answers. And it's your responsibility throughout your entire lifetime to not accept some dogmatic explanation or someone else's hearsay, and instead to evolve your own understanding every day as you become smarter and smarter, as you use your own intuition and discernment to figure out the world around you. And that's your religion. That's your worldview. That's your spirituality. Call it what you want, but it's your responsibility to do that. And when you give it up to anyone else, no matter how good intentioned they are, even Jesus or Buddha or whoever it is, that's just their experience. That's not yours. Sure, read them. Sure, learn from them. But to take on someone else's experience or someone else's religion and to say, I am this, I am Muslim, and now suddenly you have to do what all other Muslims do and what is written in this one book. Now suddenly your life has just become a narrow, tiny little box, and all thought and action must come from one book, the Bible or whatever it is. There's millions of great books out there. How can you possibly take one and say, this one, I like this one. I'm going to say that all the answers to all of life's questions, no matter what you ask me, I can find the answer in this little black book. What do you want to know? What do you want to know? And then you open up a section. You say, well, it says right here, Matthew 7:24, some symbolic, metaphorical parable that I can twist to be whatever it is I say I want it to be. And there you go. There's the answer. And then people start living their lives this way. Instead of using their own brain and their own critical thinking, they just start using ancient metaphors and say, look, this proves whatever. The Bible can prove anything you want it to. There's passages of it that say that the animals were created before Adam and Eve, and there's passages that say Adam and Eve were created before the animals. There's passages that completely contradict each other in most books, and that's just the nature of reality. We can't be trusting of someone else's opinions. We have to only trust our own. That's what I'm getting at here.
More than being bothered by those people who want to shove their beliefs down my throat, I'm more bothered by those who say, hey, Mel, don't look there. Don't try to open that door because there's nothing behind it. I am more bothered with that, or people who say, don't look at the flat earth. That's just a distraction. Look, I just want answers, folks. I want to pierce the veil. If after all these interviews that I'm doing with Eric Dubay and others, it just so happens that we live in a sphere, so be it. But as of right now, I look at that horizon. I go to a very, very, tall mountain, or I go up on a plane. I don't see it. And all I see is pictures with fisheye, and those are the ones people say, look, it's a globe. You can see it on that picture. Let me do my own research. But Eric, have you seen these submarines that are going down to very, very deep areas of the Black Sea, and they're finding remarkable rivers with trees, leaves, waterfalls, rivers under the ocean? Have you seen those?
I've seen, who was that guy? There was one deep sea explorer that was talking about how he went down to the depths, I think it was the Mariana Trench, or one of the deepest places in the ocean, and saw what looked like a lake. And there was like steam rising over it, and like you said, little greenery and stuff around it. And so he thought, oh, let's go down into that underwater lake or whatever it is. And as he goes to go into it, he bounced off of it. Said it was so saline, the water was, that you couldn't penetrate it, as though there's like a whole nother level of super saline water under the oceans, under the level, the sea level that we have. And, the Bible and other things actually talk about something like this. There being, separating the waters from the waters is one of the first things the Bible said that God did. What does that mean? Separate the waters from the waters. But it's interesting when you see something like this, and it's literally like a level of one kind of water separated but connected to the oceans, the other level of water.
And the reason why I ask is, this is more of a speculative question, but I've seen the footage of these amateur rockets that go all the way up. All of a sudden, it's not that they explode or crash into something, but it's almost as if they bounce off something. What possibly could the sky firmament be made of, and are those really stars above us?
The anything that we've sent up, like balloons or rockets, it reaches a point that it can't go any further and starts coming back down. What goes up must come down. The old adage very much is true, but doesn't make any sense on the spinning ball Earth because there is no up and down on a spinning ball Earth. It's just gravity pulling things toward a central position, and the idea of up and down are just some foolish notion that you think. So when things actually go up, again, you're able to rise up because of relative density. So what happens is you use a helium balloon or whatever it is, or a propulsion system. But then once you get to a layer of atmosphere that gets lighter and lighter, the balloon will pop as it equalizes, or the propulsion system won't be able to have anything to push off of, so it starts to arc downwards and will eventually make a parabolic curve and come back down to Earth, which is even what the official happens to the official rockets, the official sources. You'll notice they don't go straight up either. They make a parabolic curve and eventually come right back down to Earth. They say that they're going around the curvature of the ball Earth, and that's the reason why you always see that parabolic curve that every single rocket makes. But what they're really doing is just shooting a rocket into the ocean and then giving you CGI images and studio footage from the supposed moon or Mars, or when they're in outer space, they are in a dark pool. They do their outer space ISS footage in pools, and that's why you'll often see bubbles in space. They've been caught over and over and over again, right up, even images just a couple weeks ago, bubbles in space. Air bubbles, because they're not in space. They're in a dark pool of water with projected LCD screens showing a fake ball Earth underneath them. And when they're in their supposed ISS, they're just floating around either on zero-G planes, which is just a regular plane doing a type of maneuver that allows for weightlessness, which you can then cut and paste scenes of to make it seem like you're weightless ad infinitum. And people ask me this a lot. Well, if that's the case, then you can only maintain weightlessness for short periods of time, yet they have supposedly uninterrupted shots going for minutes showing people floating. Firstly, they do most of those with green screens and wires, so they're not in zero-G planes for most of the long footage. And for some of the footage that is longer and free-floating, you'll notice that they have spliced it. There's people have shown made videos debunking these things. You'll see that the people will fade out and then fade back in if you slow it down to the very last frames of each little section that they're doing, they are splicing these things to make it look like longer footage, and they're floating in their planes, making it look like they're in outer space. This is one of their illusions that they've achieved to really make people think that their infinite space cosmology is a reality.
Speaking of the illusion, look at Hollywood, the movie Gravity. I think I mentioned this to you the last time we spoke, but Alfonso Cuarón, the director of that movie, was in a press conference, and a reporter all of a sudden said, "So, Mr. Cuarón, how were you able to accomplish this? How many months did you stay up there in space filming the movie?" And Cuarón kind of bit his tongue, thinking, this guy is serious. And he actually said, well, we want to thank the Russians because they allowed us to stay there for 1 month, and we want to thank this and the Europeans. And the reporter just believed it. So imagine how many people believe Hollywood. So if they believe Hollywood, they must believe NASA.
That's right. Look how convincing Hollywood does it with movies like Gravity. If Hollywood can convince you that well in a studio that they're out in outer space, then why can't NASA have been doing the same thing for the past 50 years?
With billions of dollars. Not millions, but billions.
Right down a sinkhole. Yeah, a CGI sinkhole. And so like I said, that they get us to believe that they're out there in space floating around by doing these camera tricks and effects. But in your own experience, if you've gone skydiving, you don't float. No matter how high you go up, you come right back down to the Earth. You take, like I said, the rockets, parabolic curve, come back down. A plane, you try to go up at as much of an arc as you can. Eventually, you're going to get to a point before about 100,000 feet that you just can't anymore, and you're going to come right back down. How come these people claim that they can, and then they just start floating? Where's this magic floating point in the atmosphere? They can't tell you this either, that no matter how high you get, you come right back down, right down to the Earth. But there's some point where, past this point, 1 inch past whatever this magic point is, now you just float infinitely. And that's what they say they're doing.
Or what about this Van Allen belt? Two layers. The inner layer, which is 600 miles, so we're told, and the outer layer, 3,700 miles of radiation. So in order for us to go to the moon, we have to go and come back. Now, I don't know how old you are, but I remember when I was younger, I would go to the airport and I had my non-digital camera, and at the airport they would tell, oh, don't send it through the X-ray because it's going to be fried. You'll lose your photographs. If that's what they're telling me here on Earth, those people who took those Hasselblad cameras up there, wouldn't they get fried? Not to mention their own bodies because their suits were not built with gold layers.
Right. Yeah, they can't keep up with their own nonsense. So they tell us that they've been hundreds and hundreds of miles out there and that there's radiation, but then they forget that the type of radiation that they've told us about is so bad that they would die and all of their camera footage would be gone if it actually existed. So then when you call them on that, then the astronauts and awe their way through it and say, well, I heard that there was radiation, but we didn't really experience anything, except when you close your eyes, we see little specks of light, and those are actually radiation specks.
Or Alan Bean, who said, we hadn't discovered it then. So that makes it...
that was hilarious.
Yeah, incredible. Now, last question of Flat Earth before you give me 5 minutes of the dinosaur hoax. I thought the show was going to be a lot of dinosaurs, but I'm so glad that we did a Flat Earth Part 2 because we need it. What will all the academic astronomers, the astronomers, NASA employees, climatologists, cartographers, astronauts, and supporting government employees do for work when a globe Earth is exposed as a hoax?
Right. All their cushy Freemason-given jobs are going to be taken away because they haven't done a good enough job at them. When you become a Freemason, you rise in the degrees, you're put into, if you're not already in positions of power and then brought into Freemasonry, you're brought into Freemasonry and then put into positions of power. And so when these people fail at their propaganda positions and the truth comes out, they're going to be out of a job. So that's what's going to happen. And not only will they be out of a job, but they'll be out of credibility. And that's not just NASA and every other space agency, but every government institution, university, everywhere that's been teaching this nonsense now has to totally restructure and rethink where they're getting their information. And society itself has to restructure and rethink about, am I going to spend all this money just to be brainwashed? Am I going to send my kids to these public schools that are teaching them this nonsense? Am I going to vote for the politicians and people that are upholding this? Am I going to work for the militaries that are supposedly getting ready to deal with the off-world alien invasion? They're now mixing military propaganda with science fiction. They've got commercials on U.S. TV for the U.S. Army acting like they're going to fight aliens.
That's
and
right.
Claiming, yeah, it's the weirdest stuff. So I mean, they're really pushing into this science fiction worldview that they've been indoctrinating us into. I think we're close to the next step.
I think so. Absolutely.
The next step will be the disclosure, whatever you call it, of aliens, and they're going to unleash, be it a holographic or technological or genetic hybridization type thing, something that is going to make the populace believe these aliens are real and that we need to unite to either welcome or fight them. And that's going to be the next step in this huge indoctrination. And man, once we're there, just think how difficult it's going to be to get people out of this.
I've said this from day one, Eric. This is season 8. From day one, I said, don't ever expect real disclosure coming from the powers that be, from the government, because that's not going to be real. It's going to be another false flag event. This time, the mother of all false flag events, uniting the militaries of the world, creating one world government. And guess what, folks? It's going to be a lie, and you're going to be subjugated. If you think you're not a slave now, wait until this happens. But last questions about the dinosaur hoax. We never saw anyone talk about dinosaurs. Wasn't it until the 1840s when we started talking about this?
That's right. The person that coined the phrase dinosauria, the terminology for what these things supposedly are, was a knighted man. What's his name? Sir Richard Adams in 1842. And
Owen?
Richard Owen. Is that right? Richard Owens. Yeah. And you didn't have all the cultures and around the world before this time, nobody's making these dinosaur discoveries that were supposedly found shortly thereafter. But once this idea came up that there was dinosaurs and that these were the missing link that they had in Darwinian evolution, oh, well, it just suddenly appears, and appears over and over again, as consistently done so for the past 150 years, to the point that now we've got huge museums full of fake bones
Propagandizing.
propagandizing the idea that these things actually existed, when if they did, they should have been known to all cultures throughout all civilization forever, and we should be tripping over them and digging them up ourselves, not just having them behind lock key from vested, interested parties, and only since the idea of evolution was created. That points to a hoax, and many of these supposed dinosaurs have actually been proven to be a hoax. Two of the guys that created most of the dinosaurs that we know today, Edward Drinker Cope and Oswald Marsh, something along these lines, they were said to have discovered hundreds of species of dinosaurs and hundreds of bones, yet even in their time, many hundreds of their supposed discoveries were outed as frauds, and only a minority of the supposed discoveries that these two men made are still said to be true, even though the majority of the supposed dinosaur finds, including the very first ones that were ever made, have been proven to be false. The very first dinosaur that came out, it's called a Trachodon, which means a toothosaurus, and all they found was 3 teeth. They found 3 unidentified teeth, and this is what they based the entire animal on. And since then, it hasn't gotten much better. The supposed physical evidence that they're building these dinosaurs off are something like a thigh bone and an arm bone, and they don't know what it is, and then they've reconstructed the skull, the skin, you name it, the whole thing. They've created all these things for kids to make them think that they know exactly what these creatures look like. Yet it's been exposed over and over again that the bones of a brontosaurus's neck strangely coincide with the bones of a giraffe, and the bones of some of these deep-sea dinosaurs strangely look exactly like the bones of a blue whale. And so a lot of what they've even admitted to doing, some of these people, is that they're mixing bones of actual animals that existed and creating these fake dinosaurs in structures that couldn't possibly exist. A lot of the exhibits have to use wires to hold up the heads and the tails and the arms and everything, because they would be completely crushed under their own weight. The Tyrannosaurus Rex, for instance, the weight of all of its mass wouldn't be able to hold on its tiny little knee joints, and the way that it's forward, the front part of its body doesn't counteract the tail. It's way heavier than the tail would be, and so they wouldn't be able to physically move around that way. The idea that these kind of giant, weird, moving beings could exist at all has been questioned. So they're giving us, in science fiction, to make us believe these things. Just like they give us Star Trek and Star Wars, then they give you NASA. Well, they give you The Land Before Time, Jurassic Park, and then they say, oh, by the way, it's all real. Believe that science fiction stuff.
But we're told that the Earth was much smaller and gravity was less powerful, and that's why these very heavy creatures could inhabit the Earth at that time. But what about, they keep bringing these alleged bones out, but they never bring out, and as a matter of fact, I've heard that the Smithsonian has removed any evidence directed at giants. And even years ago, I keep talking about this all the time, years ago, one of our listeners, his father lives in Iran, and at the time there was an earthquake in Iran in the south part, I believe it was, and a whole city was unearthed, almost like, a city, and they started seeing these bones, and they found out that there were 9 feet tall women. And nobody wants to talk about this ever. Giants walking the earth.
Right. This is the reality that's being covered up. A lot of these actual big bones certainly could be from giants, and people have sent giant skeletons to the Smithsonian and National Geographic only to have them completely disappear.
Yep.
There's even been accounts from Smithsonian employees saying they've seen them dumping these bones into the ocean to get rid of them. So to this day, There's been hundreds and hundreds of accounts of human giant skeletons being dug up all over the world for thousands of years, and there is physical evidence still in existence of these things, just like there isn't of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs haven't been discovered for thousands of years, and you can't see dinosaur bones. They won't let you see them, whereas these giant bones do exist, but there's a concentrated effort to cover this up. And anyone that gives their giant bones to Smithsonian or whatever finds them gone. If you call up the Smithsonian today, they'll say that they have never found a human giant skeleton and that such a thing doesn't exist. Now, again, this is huge, and I believe this to be part of what the dinosaur thing is covering up, is that there is a legitimate giant human being phenomenon, so that there would be giant bones of unknown origin. And then when they find them, an easy way to cover it up is to say that it's this dinosaur, and that fits their little evolution gap that they've been looking for. But in reality, we have midgets like hobbits, we have giants like the orcs, and we have us humans in the middle here. The world is much like the Middle Ages, the Lord of the Rings, in the sense that there really are these different size of people that have been created.
The Homo florescensis in Indonesia.
Giant human beings still exist. There are 8 and 9, almost 9 feet tall people that still exist now. And there's, like I said, there's accounts of living giant beings as soon as only 500 years ago, when the Spanish explorers first came to the Americas. They were well known to the Native Americans and Mexicans. They have many accounts. All over America, there's been burial mounds of skeletons dug up, and you can see newspaper articles from the 1800s, early 1900s, up until modern day, where they're finding these giant skeletons, but then when you look for them in a museum or somewhere shortly after, they're gone. These things are swept under the carpet as quickly as they're found, but if you look into them, there's plenty of evidence for giant human beings having existed, unlike the spacious evidence for supposed dinosaurs ever having existed.
They don't want us to know our real history, because once we know our past, we know who we are and we know our future. Whether we live on a flat earth or not, I think I've come to the conclusion that we live on a Truman Show style reality. We accept, not we, but most people accept the reality of the world in which we are presented. It's as simple as that. Eric Dubay, once again, another great show. How can people get in touch with your work? Buy your books?
Atlanteanconspiracy.com. I'm Eric Dubay on YouTube, and ifers.ace.st is the International Flat Earth Research Society Forum, not to be confused with the Flat Earth Society, which is the controlled opposition group that's been around for a long time, making you think Flat Earth is ridiculous. But come over to the International Flat Earth Research Society, and you'll see that it's actually the spinning ball Earth that's ridiculous.
Eric Dubay, once again, thank you so much for being part of Veritas, and let's hope to have you back next year again.
Great. Thanks, Mel.
And have a great day.
You too, Mel.
Take care. Bye-bye. And that was Eric Dubay with another installment of The Flat Earth. Thanks to you, Veritas member, for paving our truth journey every week. And tonight I'll leave you with a quote by Bruce Lee. Those who are unaware they are walking in darkness will never seek the light. Thanks for listening. I'm Mel Fabregas. Until next week, be well.